At my birthday dinner, I overheard my daughter-in-law whisper into her phone, "She's keeping him occupied. I'll handle the accounts tonight." I wasn't meant to hear it. The restaurant was loud, cutlery clinking, soft music weaving through conversations, but her voice slipped through the noise. Like a blade finding its mark, I stood just behind her unseen, the candlelight flickering against the polished floor as if nothing had shifted. But everything had. For a moment I simply watched her, the way her fingers tightened around the phone, the way her shoulders stiffened when she turned and found me there, her face drained of color so quickly it was almost graceful. I didn't say a word. Not then. At the table, my son laughed at something trivial, completely unaware. I smiled too, lifting my glass, feeling the weight of years, of trust, of quiet sacrifices, settle into something colder, sharper. Because in that single sentence, she hadn't just revealed a plan. She had revealed exactly who she thought I was. I've always been the quiet one in the room, the one people assume is listening, but not understanding. It's a useful misconception. I built everything my family now stands on. The house, the savings, the small business my son proudly calls his own. Though it began as mine, piece by piece after his father passed, I never corrected him. Let him feel like he carried something. It mattered to him. When he married her, I welcomed her without hesitation. She was sharp, efficient, charming in a way that made people lower their guard, including me at first. But over time, I noticed the small things, how she'd take over conversations about finances, how decisions quietly shifted without ever being discussed. Papers I hadn't seen before would appear already signed. Accounts I once monitored became too complicated for me, or so she insisted gently, always with a smile. I let it happen, not because I didn't notice, but because I wanted to see how far she'd go. It's a strange thing, being slowly erased from your own life while sitting right in the center of it. And now, standing in that restaurant, hearing her plan unfold so casually, I realized something simple. She hadn't just underestimated me. She had already written me out. It hadn't started with anything obvious. That would have been easier to confront. Instead, it came in small, forgettable moments, so small they almost felt imagined. She began finishing my sentences at dinners, smiling as if she were helping. "What she means is," she'd say, her tone soft, corrective. My son would nod, grateful for the clarity, never noticing how my words were quietly replaced with hers. Then came the documents. Folders left open, just long enough for me to glimpse numbers that didn't match what I remembered. When I asked, she'd pause, just a fraction too long, before answering. "Oh, I handled that already. It's simpler this way. Always simpler, always without me." Even the house shifted under her influence. Furniture rearranged while I was out. Old photographs moved from the living room to quieter corners, like memories being politely dismissed. Once, I found my late husband's watch missing from its usual place. She returned it with a light laugh. I thought it needed cleaning. But it wasn't the actions themselves. It was the way she looked at me afterward. Measured, almost curious, as if waiting to see whether I would notice. And every time, I gave her the same response. A small nod. A quiet smile. Permission. That night, I didn't confront her. I finished my dinner, cut my cake, thanked everyone for coming. I played my part so well that even she began to relax again, mistaking silence for weakness. But something had already shifted. When we returned home, I moved through the house slowly, as if nothing had changed. My son went to bed early. He always did after celebrations. She lingered in the living room, her laptop open, the faint glow reflecting in her eyes, waiting, timing it. I passed by without a word and went to my room, closed the door, sat in the dark. And then quietly, I picked up my phone. There are habits you never lose, not when you've spent years managing every account, every password, every detail before handing it over. She thought she had taken control. In truth, she had only been using what I allowed her to see. One by one, I accessed what still belonged to me. Not to take anything back, not yet, but to watch, to confirm, to understand the full shape of her plan. An hour later, I saw it. The transfers, the new account, the name I didn't recognize. I didn't panic. I didn't even feel anger. Just clarity. Because now, for the first time, I wasn't reacting to suspicion. I was looking at proof. I didn't act the next day, or the day after. Rushing would have been her mistake, not mine. Instead, I returned to something I understood far better than she ever would. Structure, paper trails, quiet leverage. Before I handed anything over, I had spent years managing contracts, taxes, and accounts myself, not out of control, but out of necessity. I knew where things began, where they ended, and more importantly, where they could be redirected without noise. First, I documented everything. Screenshots, timestamps, transaction histories, filed neatly, backed up twice. Then I made a single, discreet appointment with the bank manager I had known for years. Not to accuse, just to review account access and update authorization layers. My name was still there, buried but present. That was enough. Next, I contacted a lawyer. Not for confrontation, but for clarity. Ownership, liability, inheritance. Every detail mapped out quietly. I didn't need a scene. I needed certainty. Move through her routine. Let her believe her timing was perfect. Even smiled when she spoke about simplifying things further. But behind that stillness, every door she thought she had opened, I was already closing. I chose an ordinary morning. No raised voices, no tension in the air, just routine. My son left early, kissing her cheek, thanking her for handling things. She smiled, the same practiced softness, and walked him to the door. An hour later, her phone rang. I was in the kitchen, pouring tea, when I heard the shift in her voice. Confusion first, then disbelief. "That's not possible," she said quietly. A pause. "No, I authorized..." Another pause, longer this time. I stepped into the doorway, not hiding anymore. She looked at me as she listened, color draining slowly, the same way it had at the restaurant. The bank had flagged the transfers overnight. Access permissions updated, accounts frozen pending verification. Every path she had been using, sealed, cleanly, without accusation. Just procedure. Her hand trembled slightly as she ended the call. "What did you do?" she asked, barely above a whisper. I set my cup down carefully. "Nothing unusual," I said. And it was true. I hadn't exposed her, hadn't even named her actions. I had simply restored what was already mine and let the system do the rest. She sank into the chair, staring at the floor, calculations unraveling behind her eyes. For the first time, she wasn't in control of the narrative, and I didn't need to say anything more. By evening, the silence in the house felt different, heavier, aware. My son noticed it first, not the details, not the mechanics of what had happened, but the absence of ease. He asked her a simple question about the accounts, the same casual trust in his voice. She hesitated, just a second too long. That was all it took. "What do you mean it's under review?" he pressed, confusion sharpening into concern. I stayed in the background, listening, not interfering. She tried to explain, carefully chosen words, softened edges, but facts are stubborn things. The bank had already contacted him, by then. Verification, signatures, discrepancies. Nothing dramatic, just enough to pull at the thread she had been weaving so quietly. He looked at her differently after that. Not with anger, not yet, but with distance. Doubt has a way of settling in slowly, like dust you only notice once it's everywhere. No accusations were made that night, no scenes, but the trust between them shifted. And once that foundation cracks, it doesn't return to what it was. As for me, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Not victory, not satisfaction, just presence. For years, I had been fading in my own life, allowing myself to become background noise. Now I was unmistakably visible again. And sometimes, that alone is enough to change everything. In the days that followed, I didn't rush to define what came next. For once, I allowed things to unfold without interference. Conversations happened behind closed doors. Voices stayed low, controlled, but the distance between them grew clearer with each passing day. My son began asking questions he should have asked long ago, not just about the accounts, but about everything, decisions, changes, the quiet shifts he had overlooked. It wasn't anger driving him. It was realization, and realization, I've learned, is far more lasting. As for her, she moved differently now, careful, measured, no longer certain of the ground. Beneath her, she avoided my eyes at first, then started meeting them again. But without that quiet confidence she once carried, I didn't punish her further. There was no need. The illusion she had built had already collapsed. And with it, the version of me she had relied on. I returned to my routines, but not as I had before. This time I stayed present, involved, seen, because I understood something now that I hadn't fully accepted before. Silence is powerful, but only when it is chosen, not imposed. And the difference between being overlooked and being underestimated is a lesson people only learn once.